Next curve.
Hi, everyone. This is Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst with NextCurve, and welcome to this special sponsored Rethink webcast featuring Ian Uriarte, who is the CEO and founder of Timbergrove, and we'll be talking about accelerating the path to market and value for industrial IoT. Ian, welcome. It's great to have you on the Rethink podcast, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Leonard. Sorry. Thank you, Leonard, for having me.
No problem. And why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and Timbergrove?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Ian Uriarte. I'm the founder and CEO of Timbergrove. We help companies solve connectivity and visibility issues related to their physical assets. So facilities, fleets of drilling rigs, fleets of trains, airplanes, and we help them basically keep an eye remote monitoring, for those for their assets and minimize downtime and optimize their uptime for productivity. We've been doing this for 14 years. Previous to that, my background, I'm an electrical engineer who spent the first half of his career, almost 30-year career in oil and gas. Doing a lot of work on what we call OT, operational technology, a lot of systems integration with the data acquisition systems, PLCs, SCADA systems. And then the latter part of my career, the last 15 years before that, in the enterprise space, doing consulting, with companies like IBM, where you and I worked for a little while. And then, with Timbergrove in the last 14 years as well. Doing enterprise portals, enterprise asset management, and projects of such, system integrations overall.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you know what? Congratulations, because, being an entrepreneur is a thing, and you're a founder, and it's great that, you've been doing Timbergrove for 14 years. That's saying a lot. So
thanks.
Yeah.
Leonard.
So, let's jump into this. And I really want to start off by talking about, I think what really is sort of the essence of your business, which is systems integration, right? And one of the things that we hear a lot in the IIoT space is this idea of this easy button, right? That there's some sort of easy button that folks are trying to build that makes the deployment and implementation of, let's call it, industrial IoT solutions, just a click of the button type of thing. But I think, you as a systems integrator, what are some of your thoughts, and what are some of the ground truths that you deal with and you and your team deal with on a daily basis, and in delivering these solutions? And is there such a thing as an easy button as you see it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Leonard. I think that there's no such thing as an easy button, right? There is to me, there's a big difference between easy and simple. And I think that there is a lot of complexity around this type of solutions, right? There is a lot of systems in the operational side of things, a lot of systems in the enterprise side of things, and a lot of people and teams in between that, that can, need to coordinate and work together to make these projects deliver the value that these companies invest, to get to deliver value, basically, right? So it's a huge investment. And so I think that what we keep finding time and time again is that what companies like us do, and the value that we add in that process of delivering an IoT solution, especially in the industrial sector, is associated mostly with the fact that we have the expertise of working with multiple systems, right? We're not just system developers. We have expertise and we develop our own methodologies and best practices that we are keeping up with the industry. We work with multiple industries, so we get to see what other companies are doing, right? Or what other industries are adopting. And so it helps us understand not just the perspective of the hardware, of the connectivity or just the enterprise side of things, but a very systems view of how an industrial IoT solution works. So I think that's kind of like how do you simplify that? You create processes, you create your documentation, you create partnerships. That's kind of what we've been doing over the last few years. with both hardware and software providers, so that that when you go into the field and implement these systems, you don't have a undefined amount of time, right? And we all know, all companies, everybody has limited resources, right, to implement these things. And the worst thing could happen is that you come and you have a timeline and you can never hit that timeline because, you run into too many problems,
Yes.
So.
Yes. And there's always constraints, in one shape or form or the other. And, the other thing is to your point about complexity, each client environment, right, is unique and different, has its own set of complexities, and almost always is complex, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's what a system integrator has to work through in many instances, not just looking at the application, but one of the things I think is important for the industry to understand is something that you and I have talked about, is the role of this systems integrator, and how in many instances, and what the systems integrator does is bridges the business with the technology and helping them, come to a solution that is implementable, is deployable, and most importantly, it becomes valuable to the enterprise. And I think that's an important thing for the industry in general to understand, as they're moving from this developer mindset that this is all about developers. Well, there is this transition, or this realization now, the importance of the role of the SI. But there's that whole consultative aspect of a systems integrator as well, right?
That's right. If I can add something, what happens when you build platforms, you need developers, right? Tons of them. But when you integrate across multiple platforms, are called multiple pieces of infrastructure, you need people who think more systems, and they're able to think connectivity and solve those connectivity problems one problem at a time, right? And so you can't solve them all at once, right? So there's not a big bang approach. That's a very dangerous, actually, big bang approach. So we do things incrementally, and we've been doing it in so many places that we have enough assets in our arsenal of solutions, right, to be able to deliver what our customers are looking for.
Right. And speaking of arsenals, you guys have this thing called Moonshot.
Yes.
And I think it's really interesting. Why don't you take a moment to explain to the audience what Moonshot is, and sort of the role that it plays in, and how you guys use it in accelerating value for your customers, your IIoT customers.
Yeah. Thanks. So, for us, Moonshot is like a templatized solution, right? So what we took is a set of existing, platforms and systems. We created an architecture, right? That is it's a reference architecture that helps us have multiple type of components, and that allows us, when we go to different customers, select which components of the reference architecture will fit the solution for that customer, right? On top of that, we have a methodology, right? An implementation methodology that starts from the moment that we do an infrastructure assessment to understand what problem we're solving, so that we're not spending a lot of time, spinning our wheels solving the wrong problem, right? That we can understand that if the objective is connectivity, that's what we're going to focus on initially, right? We're going to go after connectivity. If the objective is to manage the data lifecycle, right, of IoT, we'll go into do that, right? And if they're already advanced and they're already managing that lifecycle, are we talking about dashboarding and alerts, alert management? Some companies already have enough data, have terabytes of data. There is being cleaned up and ready to be used. So do they want to focus on prediction, right? So predictive analytics, right? Do condition-based monitoring, of assets. And so what we built is a kind of a blueprint that is per industry, and allows us to cut the timeline to delivery for our customers.
Yeah, and it's what. So for the folks who have SI background or have worked with some of the big houses or consulting firms, this is what we call accelerators. Remember those? Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things that really makes the difference between an SI and just a development house, right? You have, like what you're saying, solution patterns, not just code base and reusable code and stuff like this. You have all these other artifacts, and I think one of the most important ones that I've noticed in Moonshot is the assessment phase assets that you guys have, because I mean, in my own experience, I've been doing I've historically done tons of SI work, right? One of the things that is absolutely important to do is do a great assessment up front. And it helps you understand the ground truths that need to be dealt with, the risk profile of what you're getting yourself into. And I think you guys do like fixed price or some fixed time, pretty tricky, stuff on the commercial and project management end of things. You really need to have a very, very good sense of what the customer's environment is, what their requirements are. And that takes a lot of expertise, right? It's not just, I mean, it's one thing to have the methodologies and the questionnaires, let's say the templates and the tools, but you need to have that expertise, which I think you guys bring to the table, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
You have been kind of doing this for a long time.
Yeah, we've done some of that together back in the past. But the reality is that for us, what has been key is developing these tools, these techniques, these patterns and templates, but also is getting the team familiar with it, right? As we develop these things, being able to train people on it, people having the ability to cross-train from different, type of solutions, different type of systems that we integrate again. I mean, it's kind of redundant. We're talking about systems of systems, right? Because,
right.
This is the part where somebody talks about an IoT platform. That is just one of the tools that is in the arsenal of tools that you need to actually implement the solution. And so we get people, cross-train, developers that are working on platforms. We move them into developing in embedded systems, and we do have people who are specialized in embedded system development, right? But having those people understand, develop, work a little bit on C and figure out how do you load, into a device, a particular template, right? And how does that template affect the way that data is coming into the enterprise side of things? And so very important for everybody in the team to see that,
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you're making, because in the past, in the work that I used to do, fluency on your team is important, especially as a SI organization, being able to have a group of folks, experts that you're nurturing over time through a series of engagements, building that asset base, right? Building it into your accelerator set, and being able to have that common language. You know what I'm saying? Fluency, language. It's also a language, because oftentimes when you go out in the field, I mean, you have all these different vendors, different environments, customers with their own lingo. You have kind of you provide a Rosetta Stone. And I think these are the types of things that do accelerate value delivery in a certain aspect, in that it reduces risk. It facilitates communication. And I think that seems to be a thing that you guys have embedded into Moonshot that I think is really important. I mean, that's just an indicator of, mature practices in maintaining these things, because you do have to maintain and incubate them over time so that they become, number one, accelerators in the field, but then number two, differentiators for you guys as SIs, right?
Yeah, I think it's key because it helps us, as you said, shorten the time, to market. That language, that kind of shorthand conversation that allows, back-end, front-end developers, hardware developers, platform developers to connect the system, right, and deliver the value. It only comes over time, and it comes with the fact that we were able to develop a blueprint, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of the experiences that you guys have had, how you've applied, how you've applied Moonshot, and what are some of those approaches that have helped your customers realize value sooner than later?
I think, starting from the assessment, right? We do this very templatized. We start with number one, right? Number one is understand what problem we're solving, right? Where are the, what is the low hanging fruit that we can deliver to our customers so we can do this iteratively, right? Part is understanding that, doing a full assessment of not only the infrastructure on the OT side, but also on the IT side, but also on the business side, right? So who are going to be the end users of this platform? What are the decisions that they have to make based on the information that comes from an IoT, right? IoT at the end of the day, I mean, it's existed there. Sometimes it's in form of Excel, right? I mean, it's been in it's data, right? At the end of the day, you consume to make decisions. That's all it is. It's a new way to acquire data, right? You're acquiring it via sensors, right? Yeah. You could acquire that data by a human entering the data on a spreadsheet or by going to the field and emailing that, right? It's kind of like that will be the analog way of doing it, right? And so, what we try to understand is what is the business problem that we're trying to solve, and then apply the templates to figure out what components will make up the system that will deliver that value, right? Yeah. And so that is a key. Like you were talking about, doing the assessment, well done assessment will help us minimize risk, right? Understand where the risk items are. What will be the how are you going to manage that risk and deliver the value that you promise? And then again, because we do fixed price, and then we also talk about a time box on where we're going to deliver this value. We can't be sitting there around for forever, right? Or the customer cannot be sitting around forever because we have a contractual obligation. Right. We wouldn't be in business if we kept doing that, right? And so, so that's the first part. I guess the second part that we do is we have developed this, as we talk about the templates and everything else, we have computing resources in the cloud that are pre-configured, or they are just configurable, right, for the particular type of components that we're going to integrate at the end of the day. We have templatized, scripts that allows to deploy those computing resources in the cloud in different areas, whether it's, we do this agnostically. We can work on AWS, we can go to Azure, right? We used to work with IBM initially, but they have exited the space. Once we have all that, the third piece is understand, what type of alerts or alert management, event management. Is this a real-time type of a system, or is it a event-based system? What do you want to do with these events, right? How do you want to manage the events? Who's going to see those events? What actions will be taken based on the events? Yeah. How will be displayed to the users? And so, there is a level of consultancy, right, that is built into the engagement, right? There's an expertise of not only systems, but also the business side, like you were describing initially. So I think that's kind of how we go about it, and how we deploy a solution, right? So we've done it for anything from agricultural space, we work in the space of cannabis, with some of the interesting, startups, right. In Canada. We've done in the US, we work with companies that do oil and gas, anything from that acquisition coming from the field, from drilling rigs. We've done also wastewater management, for resources that companies that, don't want to spill, contaminated water into their lands, right? And also, get penalties, obviously, right? That comes with that type of events. And so we deploy multiple type of solutions, and tracking anything from, we had a customer that has these 67 distribution centers in the Southeast United States, and they do so it's one of the largest creameries in the United States, and they were trying to figure out when power was lost on those facilities, because they have over $1 million worth of ice cream, right? And so how to, if power gets lost there, and because the consumption of power is so high, they cannot just have standby power on everyone. They have a select number of trucks that they dispatch to the ones that lose power when a hurricane or something like that happens. And so, so we developed those solutions and deployed them into the field. And, we learn a lot from deploying every single one of them, not only dealing with the technology, but also, with organizations, right? When organization is focused on distribution, they care about timing is very important for them, right? When you're talking about power generation, they care about, when a particular element that's generating power is going to go down, so downtime is very important for them. And so, each one has a very different approach to, how a solution is going to be delivered, so.
Yeah. And, one of the things I noticed, I mean, you mentioned partnerships earlier. You guys don't have like a whole laundry list of partners, right? Whether they're, tool software, hardware, quote unquote platforms, or what have you. And I thought that was really interesting because one of the things that I've been, saying lately is, the need for a lot of IoT players out there to really focus their partnership plays. I don't call it ecosystem because most people don't have an ecosystem. They may play in a larger, this logical scheme that you might call an ecosystem. But it's important to, I thought it was really interesting that you guys have really a very focused partner strategy. So maybe you can speak to that and how that's related to Moonshot, because
it is. Yeah, sorry. I think, Leonard, the reason why we did that is because we can't be experts at everything, right? I mean, we realize that we can learn, and we encounter in every engagement new systems that we learn how to work with,
right.
And it goes back to the arsenal, right? That bag of tools that we have, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, our partnerships, when we have to make a decision, let, for example, somebody doesn't have the sensors, right? Or somebody has sensors, but they don't have wireless connectivity. Instead of, giving a plethora of partners to choose from, we develop these partnerships with very few ones. So we know, okay, somebody doesn't have a connectivity, we're going to go with this partner, right? We're going to go, we're going to do DG, or we're going to go, with, if it's wireless connectivity alone, we're going to go, with, in the past, we used to use Sigfox. Now we use different vendors for that type of a problem, right? So, but again, we go with, one or two in every space. And then that helps us focus efforts, because also partnerships consume a lot of time, right, and effort. We have to train people on those things, and we don't have all the resources, to do that. We're a small company.
Well, going back to what we talked about earlier, fluency, right? Because oftentimes methodologies, you want your partners to align with your methodologies. And this is something actually, it's really weird, Ian. The IoT folks don't really talk a lot about. Honestly, now that I think about it, there isn't a lot of, this stuff that we've been doing in the consulting / SI world is not often talked about as much as I would have thought. And so it's good to see that you're taking these practices, from the SI world, the consulting SI world, and bringing it to IoT. And you're absolutely right. You can't spread yourself too thin, and you have to be good at working with a certain X number of partners that you can jointly deliver together with quality for your customers, right?
Yeah, and we had to learn that the hard way, right? So initially we were like just talking to everybody, and we realized we don't have time for that. There's no way we're gonna, we're not gonna do that. We can't do that. So it's like we started focusing, and it helped us a lot, to deliver value, at the end of the day,
Yeah. And so, thanks for this conversation. I think, the big takeaways for me this is, number one, the SIs, they need to have a solid set of expertise. First off, the SI has access and has developed a solid set of accelerators, and that, through implementation, they're able to leverage those assets in a fluent way internally as well as with partners. And I think these are like important things for everyone to think about, especially enterprise folks out there who are listening in that are wondering, okay, what are some of the criteria I need to think about as I look at partnering with SIs in order to implement some of my industrial IoT solutions, right? So thank you so much. I think this is going to be a really informative, interesting session for the folks who are fortunate to listen in all the way to the end. Again, many thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Leonard, and thank you to your audience. We're excited to share and have a conversation with you about how to accelerate value to delivery value to our customers. So
yeah, and speaking of that, why don't you go ahead and help our audience understand how they can get in contact with Timbergrove, you in particular, and maybe find out more about Moonshot and how you guys are enabling the acceleration of IIoT value for your customers.
Thanks. They can get hold of me via my email, ian@timbergrove.com. Our website, timbergrove.com. There's some several pages where we talk about, systems integration. We talk about industrial IoT and Moonshot IoT as well. So, anybody can reach out through the website as well, and our LinkedIn, right? So reach out through, the largest social network, right? So happy to connect with people and, have a virtual coffee and talk about whatever problems they're experiencing delivering, an industrial IoT solutions,
Okay, wonderful. Well, there you have it. And so to all of the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in, and best of luck to all of you in your search for IIoT value. And we'll see you next time. Take care.